All right, folks, today we're diving deep into one of the most bizarre yet fascinating worlds you'll ever encounter in literature. A place where sanity is just a suggestion. Let me paint the picture. Imagine you've just moved to a small village, hoping for peace and a fresh start. Kind of like moving into a nice, quiet neighborhood, right? Wrong. Instead, you end up with two unwanted house guests, Sello and Dan, who are, well, let's just say they're not the friendly type. You see, Sello might be God, or Satan, and Dan, he's got a few disturbing habits and knows his way around the mechanics of power. So yeah, things get weird real fast. This, my friends, is the world of Elizabeth, our protagonist. Her mind becomes a battleground between these two forces, Sello and Dan, each of them representing parts of her psyche and the external world's influence. It's not just a mental breakdown, it's a mental takedown, with high stakes involving identity, race, power, and survival. Elizabeth's journey is deeply personal and yet feels universal. Born of a white mother and a native Black South African father, her life echoes Bessie Head's own traumatic experience, being outcast, stateless, and living in exile. Fleeing South Africa, Elizabeth finds herself in the rural village of Motabeng in Botswana. And just like Bessie, Elizabeth arrives carrying a dark cloud over her head, a warning that her mother's madness might just be her fate too. Can you imagine being told by the head of a missionary, "Hey, by the way, your mom was insane, so you might want to watch out or you'll end up the same." Like no pressure, right? And mad she did become. Elizabeth's mind starts to unravel, and here's where the story grips you. It doesn't just describe her mental breakdown. It invites you into the chaotic, dizzying world of her delusions. The story splits into two parts, one dealing with Sello and the other with Dan. Sello is this haunting figure, part god, part devil, who initially seems like Elizabeth's tormentor but later becomes her savior, guiding her out of her mental torment. He even shows up with Medusa because, a little mythological horror never hurt anyone, right? And then there's Dan. Oh boy, Dan. Where Sello is complicated, Dan is downright terrifying. He knows how to manipulate power, psychological, sexual, and emotional power. He pushes Elizabeth to the brink of suicide, and it's only through Sello's intervention that she survives. Elizabeth's mind becomes the arena for these two forces, Sello's philosophical musings and Dan's manipulative evil. And through this, we explore a woman wrestling with her own trauma, her past, and the relentless challenges of being both African and human in a world that feels foreign to her. This is an emotional piece similar in essence to the movie A Beautiful Mind that told the life story of the Nobel laureate in economics John Nash, who was a schizophrenic. But this novel isn't just about one woman's descent into madness. A Question of Power is also a deep reflection on power itself, who has it, who controls it, and how it can shape our world. Elizabeth's hallucinations dive into discussions about politics, religion, race, and identity. And just like in real life, the oppressors, the autocrats, are everywhere. There's Medusa, who wants to be the manager of the African continent, casting out everyone who disagrees with her. Elizabeth's discussions with these figures tackle heavy topics, like the quote from page 84 where she says, "The victim is really the most flexible, the most free person on earth. He is presented with 1,001 hells to live through, and he usually lives through them all." The novel reflects how power can imprison us, but also how resilience can set us free. All right, here it is, A Question of Power by Bessie Head. This book isn't an easy read. It's dense, emotional, and at times, disturbing. But it's also one of the most important pieces of African literature of the 20th century, and it's on the list of top 100 African books of the century for a reason. And it's no surprise that this novel mirrors Bessie Head's own life. Born in South Africa to a white mother and a Black father, Bessie was exiled and lived as a stateless person in Botswana for years before finally being granted citizenship. Her experiences, her trauma, her resilience are all embedded in this novel. In Elizabeth's struggles, we see Bessie's own. In Elizabeth's survival, we witness Bessie's victory over her own inner demons. This is a story about survival, not just in the literal sense, but in a spiritual, emotional, and psychological sense. It's a story about what happens when you're caught between two worlds, between two selves, when you're fighting to hold on to your sanity while the world around you tries to tear it apart. So, if you loved A Beautiful Mind, or if you're just someone who's interested in understanding the complex human psyche, then A Question of Power is definitely a book for you. Give it a read and maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself asking some serious questions about power too. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about Bessie Head or if you've read A Question of Power. And I'll see you in the next video, hopefully not battling with my own Sello or Dan. Bye!